Massachusetts has a massive, massive budget problem. Here's why. It is one of the only major cities, major states that collects 70% of its tax revenue from commercial real estate, which in one hand is actually okay, because normally what happens is in states like New York City, there is a higher tax burden in terms of income tax, but there is a lesser tax burden in terms of commercial real estate. Boston has 70% of that tax revenue coming from commercial real estate. The issue with that is most people, maybe not most, but a lot of people are working from home. So there is a lot of empty office space that ended up going on the market between the years of 2020 to 2024. Those buildings that sold prior to 2020 were selling for effectively $7 million plus. Now they are selling for half of that. So the tax amount collected on a per year basis is really cut in half. Okay, it's cut in half because these commercial property owners have sold their buildings, they sold their assets, and they took a loss on these, or potential loss on these properties, resulting in lesser real estate taxes. Okay, so that's one issue. The second issue, and this is a compounding effect, okay? The second issue is that, and perhaps not an issue, and I'm going to get into this a little bit further. I'm going to share some articles as well. The second issue is that Massachusetts is a sanctuary city. Boston is a sanctuary city, okay? And we have spent upwards of $75 million per month, $75 million per month. You heard that right. On housing immigrants, okay? Now, I will tell you before I get further into this video, I have no problem with people coming to this country. But the issue is that it's not sustainable due to the amount of people that are coming into this country. New York is another really good example. I'm going to do a video on that perhaps next week. So what happens is the reason that there are laws in place for migrants and people effectively coming into the country is because there ends up being a bottleneck. And what happens is they are essentially gaining resources from the residents that already are living in these cities, and it's taking money away from other sources where it could essentially be spent. So when you have people coming into the country, and let's just say it's not done legally, and you have a massive amount of people entering into the country, and more so into sanctuary cities. And by the way, New York, Boston, a lot of the Northeast is getting flooded with migrants, because in sanctuary cities, if you don't know what a sanctuary city is, let me explain it to you. So a sanctuary city basically makes it substantially harder for the federal government to intervene and to potentially deport illegal immigrants, okay? And that's what a sanctuary city does. They try to protect the rights of these illegal immigrants, which I am to a point okay with. But what happens is you have a massive flooding of people that would normally have to go through a process to be allowed residency in a specific area, in a specific state. And it puts a massive burden on a lot of public services, like schools, like hospitals, so on and so forth. Now, again, I am not saying I am against people coming to this country, by no means. So please don't crush me in the comments here. But this is a realistic issue that is happening. And that issue is putting a burden, as you are going to see in 2025, on the residents of the state. It's just going to happen. And I don't have, let me put it to you this way. Here's the thing, okay? If we're spending $75 million per month housing immigrants and doing so on and so forth, that is good. We're trying to take care of the people that are coming into this country, so on and so forth. But in one hand, but in the other hand, your current residents that have been here for a long time are suffering. Now, I did look at articles from yesteryear, okay? And overall, there's normally, at least throughout history, there is normally a positive effect when migrants come into certain cities or certain states. They actually provide a lot more tax revenue. But the issue here is that it happens so quickly, and there are so many that they are not necessarily being put in a position for success. They are definitely not living the American dream to some capacity, right? They're basically coming here, getting a certain money allotment, and nobody is helping them, to my knowledge, because I know this is happening in New York. They're not getting transitioned from where they're at to where they need to be. So if that's the case, then how is there going to be more potential tax revenue? Maybe there's some analyst out there that knows substantially more than I do, all right? But if they aren't contributing to paying taxes in the state or getting jobs or doing what they need to do, and the state is paying them to be here, that is a problem. And that's where that bottleneck comes in. So I'm going to share a few articles here and go over a few pieces of data. I also have the 2025 budget here. I'm not, of course, not going to go over the entire budget, but I am going to link most of these articles in the description below. And if you have any questions, comments, please let me know. Again, I am not hating on immigration. I am more so not happy with illegal immigration because of the bottlenecks it creates in different states. So without further ado, let me share my screen and get into some of these articles. Now, this was just posted, I believe, by the Boston Globe, and this is in regards to the sanctuary city mayor vows she will defy Trump's mass deportation push, causing widespread fear. Boston's Democrat Mayor Michelle Wu said in an interview on Sunday that her city will not cooperate with the looming mass deportation operation from the incoming Trump administration, even as the region sees a number of illegal immigrants with criminal charges released back onto the streets. Now, if you don't know this, there was somebody in Nantucket that did some very bad things, okay? And I know that's like one isolated incident, and I'm not going to say that this is how every single person that's coming into this country. It's just not the case, right? But it is happening, right? Wu was asked in an interview with WCVB about the Trump administration's plans to launch a mass deportation operation when it takes office in January, and was asked what Boston's response will be. She says, elections have consequences, and the federal government is responsible for a certain set of actions, and cities, no individual city can reverse or override some parts of that, she said. But what we can do is make sure that we are doing our part to protect our residents in every possible way. Now, again, what defines resident? Okay, because if they're here illegally, how are they essentially a resident? That doesn't add up to me. That we are not cooperating with those efforts that actually threaten the safety of everyone by causing widespread fear and having a large-scale economic impact. We are having a micro-scale economic impact here just in the state. Okay. And again, if there is some analyst out there that could predict, let's say some level of sense in how it's beneficial, I would love to see that if you want to send it to me. And the fact of the matter is, you cannot go based on, let's say, legal immigration. There's always levels of illegal immigration. It's just been absolutely insane the last few years. However, people don't want to work the way it is, right? I'm friends with a lot of business owners, restaurants, different labor forces, right? There's a lot of people that just don't want to work that are already in the state. So how are we going to get immigrants to be put in those positions when New York City is a great example? They're basically just living off of the taxpayers' dollars, and they're not going out to contribute to society. Okay, I'm sure some are, but not the majority. And that's what the problem is. Okay. So it says, Trump confirmed support for major step in mass deportation push to reverse the Biden invasion. Mayor Michelle Wu speaks about the regulations for outside dining in the North End City Hall, March 29, 2022 in Boston. And then we are providing the spaces to reach out directly to our residents, because the last thing we want is for our people who are part of our economy, part of our school systems, part of our community, and the fabric of our city to feel that all of a sudden they have to retreat into the shadows because of fear that they are reaching out to city services, whether it's calling 911 when you need it or taking your child to school. Those are all city services that have nothing to do with immigration enforcement, and we will continue to protect our residents within those spaces. Trump made a mass deportation operation a centerpiece of his campaign, and on Monday he said he was open to declaring a national emergency and using military assets. Fox News Digital reported last week that the Trump administration is already discussing where it can expand detention centers in anticipation of the operation and has spoken to private prison companies about potential expansion. But there is already brewing resistance from blue cities and states, including those that are sanctuary cities like here in Boston, meaning they do not cooperate with ICE request that detained illegal immigrants with criminal charges or convictions be transferred to ICE custody. Incoming Trump admin eyes massive expansion of immigration detention he will deliver. ICE agents conduct an enforcement operation in the U.S. interior. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey said she is prepared to use every tool in her toolbox to protect its citizens and residents, and vowed that the state police would absolutely not assist Trump in the operation. So again, this falls back into the sanctuary city thing. So again, when you have a sanctuary city, just to reiterate, they essentially immigrants that are here have substantially more protection versus non-sanctuary states. So what could potentially happen here, and this is already happening in New York City, is that people will migrate to sanctuary cities. And that is a problem because they will get an influx of more people, which essentially costs the city more money. And on top of that, we have declining tax revenue from commercial real estate. It's just like the perfect storm, right? And the people that are feeling this is the current residents, legal residents of the city of Boston and of Massachusetts. But the state and Boston area have seen a number of ICE arrests of illegal immigrants who have been charged with crimes, including child sex offenses, but then released back onto the streets. This is a problem. You know, like my daughter is 6 years old. My son is 3.5. And I'm not walking around scared or anything like that, right? But when you see these things, and again, these are, maybe a small percentage of these, illegal things happening in crime, but they're still happening. And if you have, again, a sanctuary city where you could potentially have an even bigger influx of people coming in, then that small percentage starts to get larger and larger and larger. And on top of that, they're releasing them back onto the streets because they don't have anything that they could potentially do with them, it seems. ICE announced this month that it apprehended a Colombian illegal immigrant who had been arrested on charges of enticing a child under 16. Distribution of obscene matter and lascivious posing and exhibiting a child in the nude. ICE had filed a detainer against him, but it was ignored, the agency said. And that's what's crazy, and that is part of the issues of these sanctuary cities, okay? In March, Fox News embedded with ICE officers in Boston and saw them make 5 arrests, including 4 alleged child rapists and a member of the MS-13, a group of potentially dangerous criminals, the officers say, were allowed on the streets because of local sanctuary policies that denied the agency's detainer requests. But the lack of cooperation from those states and cities is unlikely to dissuade the administration. Tom Homan, this guy is crazy, by the way. Tom Homan, appointed to be the border czar by President-elect Trump, had a message for those jurisdictions this month. And by crazy, I just mean this guy is like very, very to the point. He has been doing this for a long time, at least based on the interviews that I saw. And I think the guy has just seen things that nobody should potentially see. So he's pretty steadfast in this. Maybe crazy was the wrong word. He's not necessarily crazy, right? But he is just he is like spearheading this. And I don't know. We're going to see what happens. This is what he said. If you don't want to work with us, then get the hell out of the way. That's what I'm trying to say. We are going to do it. What it means is rather than send 100 people to Boston, we are going to send 200 agents to Boston. We're going to get the job done. Again, this guy he's hardcore, this guy, and I've seen him in front of a lot of people, and you could just tell the distress on his face. I think he understands these issues to some extent that a civilian just doesn't. And, that's what happens when these people are put in these positions. You see a lot of bad stuff, and it really changes you. And I think that's why he is just so strong and, being steadfast on these issues. But overall, again, to reiterate, you know, we're all immigrants to some capacity, right? But the fact of the matter is there are things that were put in place for people to come here legally, all right? So again, when you have the issue of not generating revenue from commercial real estate, and then you have $75 million being spent every single month on this illegal immigration and shelter and food and all of these things that they are getting, of course, the residents of Boston, the residents of Massachusetts, they're going to be upset because you're essentially robbing from Peter to pay Paul. And that is what's happening with your tax dollars. Now, to look forward into the future, I could potentially see this. It's going to take, in my opinion, a few years to iron out, right? Because number one, the sanctuary city thing, right? We're not just going to be able to take all of these people, these families, and just essentially get rid of them instantaneously. Like I said, especially in a sanctuary city, there's going to be a lot of pushback here. On top of that, you have the commercial real estate debacle where commercial real estate sales are suffering. So one of those two things, like right now, commercial real estate sales are down here. Illegal immigration is up here. We need to find a balance, right? It's some capacity. Right now, again, we're like this. That's what the major issue is. We're not generating enough tax dollars to take care of our infrastructures and things that we need. And a large majority of our tax dollars is essentially being spent on illegal immigrants, okay? Upwards of $75 million per month, at least from what I read. That is a issue, in my opinion. So let me share one more. This was Mass Senate passes budget with over $800 million to help migrant shelters. This was published back in March, but I feel like after everything that's going on with the election and obviously the increase of our taxes here, I think that this may be important to go over briefly. A budget breakthrough in Massachusetts Senate could be a game changer in tackling the Bay State's migrant crisis. State senators passed its supplemental budget late Thursday night. With the vote 32-8, senators voted for this one-time use expenditure, allowing Governor Maura Healey's administration to spend $840 million on the issue over these next 2 fiscal years. That is a lot of money. The state currently spends about The state currently spends about $75 million each month, or about $10,000 per family. That's a lot of money per month on the 7,500 migrant and local families that are living in emergency shelters across the state. Again, I feel bad for these people on one hand, but I also feel bad for the residents of Boston that are feeling the impact from this. Again, I think everybody should have an opportunity to come to the country legally and do what they need to do to achieve the American dream. And if they're coming illegally, it's just something that I can't support because, again, it puts a burden on the residents of those cities and those states, right? You're seeing it happen here. This is an issue, guys. It's an issue. This is the issue, okay? Under the plan, the amount the state will be allowed to spend decreases every month after June. It also caps the time families can stay in state-run shelters at 9 months, with opportunities to renew their stay in 90 days. In 90-day increments, if they are veterans, pregnant women, caretakers for those with disabilities, or people enrolled in a work program. You know, it's unfortunate because I'm sorry, I'm reading and I'm thinking at the same time here. You know, you see, you know this, right? You drive around Boston at night or even in the day, and there's a lot of homeless people here. And the people that are homeless are getting less support from the city or state than people that are coming here illegally. Like, it just, to me, it just doesn't really make any sense, okay? With the failure of our federal government to act in aid in this crisis, the responsibility unfortunately falls upon our shoulders, said Senate Ways and Means Chairman Michael Rodriguez. This supplemental budget before the body today represents a balanced plan to the EA shelter crisis that is proactive. You know, again, the thing is, this is like a Band-Aid on a bigger problem. And those bigger problems, again, are commercial real estate and are illegal migrants coming into our state. And again, the thing that's scary to me, just because I'm in the real estate business, is it takes a long time for real estate to recover. So it could decline substantially faster, especially commercial real estate, right? Commercial real estate could decline substantially faster than it can potentially recover because there's a lot of money involved, right? The commercial sales are a lot of money. It's not like look, our single family homes and condos are a lot of money, right? But commercial sales are $4, $5, $6, $7 million, right? And there's a less pool of buyers for commercial real estate. There just is, where there is more buyers for residential real estate. So when commercial real estate is declining, it's usually a big decline, okay? And the problem with that is that recovery is not as fast. Recovery is just not as fast. It could essentially take years to recover the commercial real estate market. And I don't know if it will recover, right? I don't know. Are more people going to be forced to work in offices? I don't think so, because these, bigger organizations and companies and stuff like that, they're saving a lot of money by not having to send people into the offices, because now they're not spending, tens of thousands of dollars or more per month on office space. So of course they're going to potentially keep a lot of its workers remotely, right? They're not stupid, right? They're in business, and they're saving money on the front end to gain more money on the back end. That's essentially what's happening, and that's why a lot of these places did not renew their leases. And these commercial real estate owners are selling their assets. They're selling their commercial real estate and taking a loss, right? They're taking a loss. And what's unfortunate is you got to remember with any kind of real estate sales. So if you have something that was valued at $7.5 million and then it sold for $3.5 million, and there was literally a building where that happened, it's a comp for the next building of similar stature, right? Of similar size in a similar location. So that is going to be a potential comparable for future sales. So if somebody goes to sell another commercial asset, right, and that, even if a buyer wants to pay the premium, what do you think they're going to pay millions of dollars over the appraised value? No, I highly doubt it, right? Unless they know something that nobody else knows, okay? They're not going to do that. So they're going to probably pay fair market value for the property, get the appraisal, and go based on that appraisal. So that's going to affect, you got to remember, the current sales are going to affect future sales because of the comps, right? So if a subject property goes under contract, an appraiser is going to use those comparables that have sold from the past, which have sold for, let's say, a third or half of what they used to sell for. And that's what that building is going to be valued at. So this is a big, big problem in a state where 70% of its tax revenue is coming from commercial real estate taxes. You understand? So while our sales are down, migrant crisis is up, right? Is it going to just continue to go like this? Because if it does, guess what's going to happen? There will be more tax burdens on our residents. Okay. All right, guys. A little frustrating today reading these articles, of course. But again, I do support people coming into this country. There's no doubt about it. But it should be done legally so that we don't have these bottlenecks. And we just don't have enough of a support system. It's this is the other, before I get off, this is the other unfortunate thing. It's substantially, and I talk about this a lot. So in terms of real estate and grants and stuff like that, it is substantially easier to hand out money than to, let's say, to buyers, right? Than to build new construction or affordable housing. It's just substantially easier. In the same token, it's substantially easier to just hand out money to people that are coming here versus trying to get them set up and find a job and do this and do that, right? That is a monumental task to get people to want to work, especially if they are already receiving $10,000 a month. I don't know the logistics of that. I saw something where they could stay somewhere for 9 months and then reapply for another 90 days. But are they still getting that $10,000 a month benefits? Like that I don't know. Maybe somebody in the comments knows better than me. But if they are, why the hell go to work, right? You're getting $10,000 a month as a family. That's $120,000 a year. That's a lot of money, right? I know it's not a lot of money in terms of, our incomes here, right? A lot of people do make quite a bit of money, but to what point are you setting these people? It's unfortunate, right? Like the thing is, again, it's the money situation. It's the money trap where you're spending money because that's the easy thing to do. It looks good on the front end, right? And it looks good in the public eye, but then on the back end, these people are I'm sure that they didn't move here just to potentially, maybe some did, right, to receive these benefits, but a longer term plan would to be get out into society, find a job, raise your family, get into housing and stuff like that. And there's just, like I said, there's just so many people that are coming into these cities, these sanctuary cities. And what's scary about this problem is, of course, coupled with the commercial real estate, and that's where our revenue comes from, tax revenue, is that once Trump is in office, okay, if they start trying to deport people from a non-sanctuary city, where do you think these people are going to go? Where do you think they're going to go? They're going to go to sanctuary cities. They came here from thousands of miles away. You don't think they're just going to drive or find a way to get from point A to point B to go to a sanctuary city? Of course they are. There's a really good video I'm going to show you guys on New York, and maybe later this week or something like that, but they are literally flooding New York City. And if you think $75 million a month is bad, New York is like double that or more. It is really, really, really crazy. And again, I don't mind temporary front-end support in supplying people money, okay, even if it does cost us money, if there's a direct benefit to the city or the state that will generate revenue in the future. And I don't know if that's what they're betting on or counting on, or I don't know if this was I talk about this a lot. This video is really long. I'm sorry, guys. I talk about this a lot, but I don't know if that was like a mathematical, educated-based decision or an emotional-based decision. It's really hard to levy emotion and, let's say, a mathematical or a data-based decision, right? It's hard to do those two, because the thing is, the public, at least the majority of the public, respond better to a emotional-based decision, which would be people come here, we provide support, right? But from an economical standpoint, if there's a direct burden, and perhaps some people are not seeing that burden, but obviously a lot of people are. And once it comes to taxes, everybody is going to see that burden. People are going to get upset. So if they didn't make some level of a database decision on this is what projections, right? Like, this is what the projections are. This is what we're projecting based on previous data, that this is a good thing, and it's going to support the future economy of the city of Boston and the state of Massachusetts. If that's the case, provide me with something to take a look at that. I know, as I said earlier in the video, I apologize, this video is so damn long. I know, I just feel like this stuff is important. I know I said earlier in the video that if you look up some data, like, of course, people moving into the country, finding jobs, perhaps taking jobs that people don't necessarily want to do, Americans don't necessarily want to do, support that ecosystem, right? They support that ecosystem. But what happened is, back in the day, where there was more legal people coming over, you didn't have this massive, massive influx of people. Okay, you did not have these massive influxes, so it's substantially harder to place people in these positions where they could achieve the American dream, because there is so many that are coming in. Jesus, the residents of our state cannot achieve the American dream. So how are they, right? Like, how is that going to be humanly possible? So the last thing that I want to tell you is that I'm friends with a lot of educators. I'm friends with a lot of people and clients that work in, whether it be hospitality or in medical hospitals and stuff like that. And personally, okay, now I was just in Pennsylvania for my grandmother's funeral last week, okay? And I spoke to a few close friends of mine, one of whom which was in education. And unfortunately, a lot of these school systems have that bottleneck where the student to teacher ratios, this is like real stuff happening, guys. I'm not making these things up. This is like real life in the trenches things that are happening. A lot of the teachers are overwhelmed by the amount of students. And what happens is they are spread thin, so that the students that they would normally have, now they have 2 or 3 times the amount of students. The amount of education, it's really hard to teach, it's really hard to teach a massive group of children, especially if they're younger children, right? Like, my daughter, 6, goes to school here, and I think there's like 3 first grade teachers, because there's a ratio there, right? There's a ratio, student teacher ratio. And I'm sure somebody substantially smarter than me knows the math behind, okay, this is the most effective student to teacher ratios. Well, when you have a ton of people coming in, those ratios get blown out of proportion. And my friend is no longer working as an educator because it just became substantially harder for them to educate. Right? It just is, it puts a strain on education. It puts a strain on the health services of this country. So again, I'm not against it. I just think it needs to be done legally because we are seeing the effects of this. All right, guys. If I made anybody upset because of this video, this is just my honest take. And this is just honestly how I feel. I am in the trenches too. And I know a lot of people that are in those same trenches. It's very easy for somebody to see this on an emotional based decision that is, high up in their tower and wants to do all of these things. And, the reality is you're a small portion of these people, right? The majority of people want to protect the people that are already struggling in the state or the city that they live in. Okay. That's just the reality. And I think that the election outcome is a direct result of that. Okay. And I'm not saying I support one person or the other. It doesn't really matter to me. I want this country to get better and I want things to be done more effectively. And I want decisions to be made that are essentially data-based decisions that on a surface level would be some levels of common sense, right? Like there's certain things that are happening. So when you're making decisions and you don't have data to back up those decisions, right? You're kind of shooting from the hip. And I don't do that, right? And that's why I get fired up about these things because I know how I run my business. These states, these cities need to run their areas and their territories like businesses as well. And they need to have projections of these things and how it may affect its residents that are here legally. Okay, so I hope nobody gets upset by this. I just wanted to voice my opinion, show you what is going on. This is really happening, and hopefully things will get better. But I don't know how they're going to get better if commercial real estate is struggling here in Boston. I just cannot see that happening, and I cannot see it happening if there is more illegal immigration and migrants coming into our state and into our cities because of being a sanctuary city. All right, guys, I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.